Hey Biscuiteers, Fuchsia here. So today we're going to talk about the nerf that just happened. It's Grimnir and Wicked Rebirth. So Grimnir got nerfed from a 435 into a much more expensive 635. Worst added to I would say compared to the cost now. And Wicked Rebirth, thank God, finally has been nerfed to a 2 play point spell, and it only targets Shadowcraft followers. Now obviously the reason they nerfed these cards was because everybody was complaining about it. It's like being tier 1 for the last like 1 or 2 weeks. It's Evo Shadow, right? Like everybody's kind of sick of Susie at the moment. Like Sushi Shadow, Evo Shadow, whatever you want to call it. It's been the menace of this expansion so far, and they decided to nerf it by nerfing Evo with Grimnir and nerfing Shadow with Wicked Rebirth, which is kind of a weird way to do it. Instead of like nerfing just Evo Shadow, as we'll see later. But let's just get into it. Let's just get into the analysis. First of all, let's see Wicked Rebirth here. So obviously now it can't target neutrals because because like the change of the text, right? So it can only target Shadowcraft followers. This means that it can't target Bellaringer Angel, which is amazing. This reduces the consistency of like of shadow decks that use that abuse, like that abusive mechanic, like so much. It just like reduces their consistency so much. Very needed, I think. And in the first place, like I don't think like normally you would care that much about it anyways, outside of that specific combo. So I think this is fine. This doesn't like reduce the power of the card too much. The second one though, the second change, which is the cost, actually does reduce the power of the cards a lot, and I feel like it's warranted because think about it. It's like a card that summons another copy of the card you just destroyed, maybe, or like another copy of like a better card, and it has 5 attack and a rush, and like depending on how many last words you get destroyed, it'll like summon more and draw you cards. It's kind of insane for 1 play point. So actually, I think 2 play points is like the baseline that's like fair-ish for this card in the first place. I think this card was a bit overtuned in the first place, so I think this is completely fair. And we can see that it has some positive, that it destroys the Evo Shadow draw engine, as I said, with Ding Dong. So with less draw, Evo Shadow has less consistency and less hand size to do combos. What that means is basically that they have less of a chance to have Skeleton Raider in their hands to reduce in order to do amazing combos in like the mid game. And on top of that, the lack of hand size also means they have less consistency to do insane combos, like for example Cernunos and like Cernunos Evo, and like with and like combos using the Gravekeeper. You know, just cards like that you would really want in your hand. Now it's much less consistent, especially if you don't actually like, you know, if you don't actually draw the Skeleton Raider early. Now you have to like actually work for it a bit, and I think this like reduces the chances of not only combos but also early damage from Evo Shadow itself, which means it'll be a lot much less oppressive, right? It still has its power cards in like Suzy and like Skeleton Raider, which has not been nerfed, but now they're a lot slower, and I feel like that makes gives a lot of other decks a chance. That said, this is not all positives. There is one negative, which is that it impacts Last Word Shadow. Now, I don't particularly think Last Word Shadow depends on this card as much as it used to, simply because like Chaotic Doom gives it a lot of like flexibility in that it has a 1 play point last word, as funny as that may seem, and also like cards like Krampus and other stuff can actually like help card draw. And for removal, they have like a lot of other options now, like for example Ginsetsu that can like deal damage, like deal a lot of damage as removal, as well as that 2/2 that can destroy another like destroy another follower on board. Can't quite remember her name right now, but yeah, it's not like they like are lacking cards, but this will definitely hurt, and this reduces their power level quite a bit. Especially, I think it doesn't hurt them too much in early game anymore, I feel like, but it does really hurt them like if they want to like do combos with like Chris too. It's just a really flexible card in general, and now that it's less flexible because of the 2 play points, I feel like it'll really impact Last Word Shadow's power level. So if it might have gotten to tier 1 after the nerf, now I don't know if it will. But overall, do I think this is a good nerf? Yes, I think overall this is a very good nerf. I think this was needed. I think actually this is the actual level the card should have been from the start. So I'm actually very happy that they did this nerf. Now moving on, of course they did 2 nerfs. The other one is Grimnir. With Grimnir here, there's a lot of like consequences to this nerf. Number 1, of course, is that you now can't OTK from 20 anymore, even if you have 10 play points. That's why they nerfed it to 6, right, instead of like 5, because now you can't OTK from 20, no matter how many play points you have, right? Unless you have like some form of play point recovery, which we'll discuss a bit later. But yeah, no more OTK Grimnirs, and thank God. There's actually one class that's still able to like OTK Grimnir, and that's Dragoncraft, because because they have a card that actually refunds them 2 play points. I'm going to show them after this. But it's also important to note that Grimnir, sometimes you would have played him as like a 4 play point follower just out of desperation, and you can also Evo him, and he'd be like a decent follower, right? He's like 8 stats total for 4, and like deals like 2 damage. It's like whatever, it's fine. Now he's a very bad follower. Now like you don't want to just put him in a deck, because if you play him on 6 without the combo, without the 5 evos, he's now a very bad statted follower at like 3-5 for 6. That's very bad. Now you can't tempo with him anymore. And I think that's a good thing. That means he's less ubiquitous in the decks, especially like Evo decks that don't really need Grimnir. Now you might think twice of including Grimnir. I think that's a really, really good change, because I really don't like ubiquitous like finishers, and that's why I love the tolerance change, and that's why I love this change, because like I said, like imagine like any archetype, like wouldn't you want to finish the game in a different way, right? Cards like Tolerance and Grimnir just make it so that like every game is just ending with this same exact card, no matter what's the class, right? So that's what, or in Tolerance's case, no matter what archetype of Portalcraft, right? So I think this is a very good change for the game overall. I think Grimnir is still a good like auxiliary finisher, if you really need it in your Evo deck. There is one class though that's still able to OTK with him, which is Dragoncraft with Prosperous Treasure Dragon, for example. And that's going to be a meme for the ages. So I'm going to look forward to that. I don't know about you. But yeah, of course, a lot of positives here I already reiterated. In the context of Evo Shadow, it's now much harder to combo with Skeleton Raider. And of course, by doing that, by being a lot harder to combo with Skeleton Raider, in tandem with like the reduction in like consistency in how you get Skeleton Raider in the first place, it mitigates the dilemma of like playing board versus empty board against Shadow. Because right now, if you play board against Shadow, they'll Skeleton Raider you and deal a bunch of damage. But if you play an empty board versus Shadow, they can OTK you with Grimnir. Now that isn't an option anymore. Now that's like, you can see they have like 6 play points. They can like play 1 Grimnir. They can't play like Grimnir and a Skeleton Raider unless the Skeleton Raider is at 0, which is much less feasible with the current Shadow nerfs. Or they play a Skeleton Raider for like 5 or like 4 or something, in which case they can't play Grimnir. So it like it's not like the end of the world, right? They can't combo it together anymore, and they can't like OTK with Grimnir anymore. So I think it really helps. Like it really helps your your state of mind when you're playing, I guess, and like reduces like the amount of like finishing potential Shadow, like Evo Shadow has outside of their main combo of like Skeleton Raider, like their main finisher, Skeleton Raider, and the ghosts. So yeah, overall, the only minus is that it impacts all other Evo decks, thus reducing their viability automatically. But to be honest, other Evo decks like have other ways of like finishing the game. For example, like other good Evo decks at least. Like for example, Bloodcraft has Seox, has also Bloodlust Demon, and if you count Wardhaven as like kind of an Evo deck, it has its own finishers. Like Grimnir is like barely played there anyways, depending on your preference. So all in all, I think like this makes it, the only thing that changes is that you can't make a class with a lot of Evos and then plop in Grimnir as your finisher. You have to actually have a defined archetype for that Evo archetype in that class, which I think is an amazing thing. This is what I mean, right? Like now every Evo archetype in every class has to have a certain identity, a certain finisher, a certain like flair instead of just Grimnir. Like for example, Forestcraft, now maybe they want to run the Mammoth, you know, like Mammoth Grimnir seems like a better combination than like just one Grimnir, you know? So I think that's overall a really positive nerf. Like, don't get me wrong, it's still a good card, I think. It's still a good card for if you're an Evo. Now you don't combo it anymore, but you might combo it with your other cards that you get from your Evo archetypes from every class. So I think overall, it's a quite good nerf, I would say. Now, there's one elephant, there's actually two elephants in the room though. What about these two menaces? A lot of people wanted these two to get nerfed actually because they think they were overtuned. Honestly, I suggested like nerfing Skeleton Raiders like Destroy effect and stuff like that. Yeah, this is what I mean when like side games decided to nerf like Evo and Shadow instead of like Evo Shadow, because if they wanted to like target Evo Shadow specifically, they could have nerfed these two cards, but instead they decided to nerf Evo all archetypes and Shadow all archetypes, and time will tell if that will be a good thing, and time will tell if Evo Shadow will be sufficiently nerfed. I think they will, like personally I think they will, but like you never know with these things, right? If they end up still being viable, I think that's a good thing, but yeah, hopefully they're not like the indisputable like #1 anymore. Susie is still bonkers, I think, but with the less consistency in like Skeleton Raiders being drawn, I think it's fine. It's probably fine, I don't know. We'll see in like a week, I guess. So assuming Evo Shadow is adequately nerfed, we can see some changes in the meta potentially. For example, like maybe the current like other super strong decks like Sekka Forest that always has Sekka on turn 7. Maybe that'll be the new king of the pile of the Shadowverse deck pile, I guess. And maybe other classes like, for example, other archetypes like for example Wardhaven, which has actually looked quite powerful early days, but then got completely countered and destroyed by like Evo Shadow. Maybe they'll have a rise, or maybe they'll like show that they're actually not that powerful. We don't know, but that's a possibility, and I'm looking forward to like see how the meta shakes up with these like potentially tier 1 decks going to the fore now, and whether Evo Shadow can still compete with them, right? Conversely, because Evo Shadow was so much of like a menace, there was like a whole contingent of like counter decks created for them, including like Heal Havencraft and Whims of Chaos. Obviously, like I'm not saying like the only purpose of these decks was to counter Evo Shadow, but one of the reasons they were like heavily played when like early on people might have not seen them as like extremely good is because they did well against Shadow, right? And it's going to be interesting to see whether they still stay in the meta, whether they'll rise in the meta, or whether they like will go down in the meta. Like for example, Whims of Chaos, I can totally see it going down, but at the same time, if like Sekka Forest becomes super tier 1, I can see them going up too, like because they're like Whims of Chaos is actually quite fun right now, and they're a nice fun on anti-meta deck, and I'm not sure if they'll be as popular as now, but maybe it'll still be there. As for Bellerophon, Heal Haven, like Eris Haven, I feel has potential, but I'm not sure if it's strong enough to survive after the meta. We'll have to see, because I feel like it still has the potential to just be a good deck, but obviously it loses that edge against like Shadow that a lot of people have been like championing with the deck, so it loses that kind of luster, I guess. But we'll have to see, I guess. That said, what do you guys think? Like, ultimately, I'm just like this Pepega VTuber. I'm not like really a super competitive player or anything. This is just my observations and my analysis. Do you think they're good nerfs? Do you think they're bad nerfs? Do you think they should have nerfed the shadow cards Susie and Skeleton Rider instead, or in addition? Tell me your thoughts down in the comments and your predictions on like what the top of the meta is going to look like after this patch. Look forward to the post patch, because I will definitely be playing more Shadowverse, like in twitch.tv/Fuchsia Biscuit, to like just grind and stuff, because now like I hope it's going to be more fun, you know. I hope it's going to be more fun. So yeah, thank you for watching this video. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up. If you loved it, give me a sub, and like always, have a great day.